Very good evening and welcome to World Panorama, where we get you the week's top international stories. I'm Tracy Shilshi and let's start the show with the headlines. US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson to visit India next week for his first bilateral interaction. It will be his first trip after American President Donald Trump enunciated his policy statement on South Asia. US envoy to the UN Nikki claims the key to India becoming a permanent member of UN Security Council is not to touch the veto. Asks government to focus on Russia and China, who are against any changes. Chinese President Xi Jinping calls for building a community of shared destiny at the ongoing 19th Congress of the Communist Party, emphasizes that China will never seek hegemony or expansion. And the Spanish government triggers Article 155 to impose central rule in Catalonia. Senate to meet next week to vote on the new measures. Our top story, US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson kicked off 8 days of extensive travel on Friday that will take him to Riyadh, Doha, Islamabad, New Delhi and Geneva. Tillerson's visit to India next week will be the first bilateral interaction between both the countries after US President Trump made his first policy statement on South Asia. Tillerson will also be visiting Pakistan to persuade it to fulfill the obligations on terrorism.
US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will visit India on the 24th of October as part of his week-long visit to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Switzerland and Pakistan. His visit to India and Pakistan will coincide with President Donald Trump's announcement of a South Asia policy in which he indicated greater cooperation with India, while blaming Pakistan for harboring terrorists and creating safe havens for them. Trump's intentions to cooperate with India was further quantified by Rex Tillerson, who said that India and the US should oppose China's illegal international practices. Indian External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Ravish Kumar said there is positive understanding between the two countries. Experts see it a new beginning in realistic relations between both nations. The MEA spokesperson said, and I quote, "The US Secretary has made a significant policy statement on India-US relations and its future. He brought out its various strengths and highlighted our shared commitment to a rule-based international order. We appreciate his positive evaluation of the relationship and share his optimism about its future directions. We look forward to welcoming him in India next week for detailed discussions on further strengthening of our partnership." Unquote.
While President Trump is going to Japan, Southeast Asia and China next month, Tillerson is coming here. So India is going to be in the focus of the United States of America as a great partner just after Xi Jinping's speech.
China seems unnerved by Tillerson's recent statements about India and the US articulation of its South Asia policy. China said the relations between India and China should be for peace and stability in the region.
我们说过，我们乐见美国跟印度，乐见世界上所有国家都能够发展正常的国家关系。只要这样的一种关系，它是有利于促进地区的和平稳定发展，有利于增进地区国家之间的互信。
Significantly, Tillerson will visit Pakistan before India so that he can discuss issues related to Pakistan in entirety with India, overturning the former practice of visiting India before Pakistan. It also marks a change in the way oldest and biggest democracies are going to conduct their relations in future.
American quest for India seems real because China and Pakistan are playing negative role in Asia-Pacific region. But it will be interesting to see that how far America can become alternative to China for India as far as goods and services are concerned. The real alliance between India and America will also depend on this realistic factor. Akhilesh Suman for Television with camera person Manoj in Delhi.
Well, to discuss more on this story, we've got strategic analyst KP Ni joining us here. Thank you so much, Mr. Ni, for being here. Firstly, just give us an idea of how, strategically this meeting, how important is it for India? And, what is it that we'll be really hoping to hear from Mr. Tillerson?
While announcing Secretary Tillerson's visit, the State Department made it a point to emphasize that this is his inaugural visit to South Asia. An inauguration is something which is part of a long process. And that implies, of course, that the Trump administration is in South Asia for the long haul. With Tillerson's visit, we have had the big three who run American policy under the Trump administration visiting India. First, National Security Advisor McMaster came.
Yes.
Then, more recently, Defense Secretary Mattis came. And with Tillerson's visit, it's like the triumvirate completing the engagement with India, which couldn't have happened many years ago. So it denotes
like
how far
policy,
we have come in bilateral relations.
Absolutely. And a lot of analysts are also of the opinion that if at all you can see any of Trump's policies as far as foreign policies are concerned, because a lot of his policies have been very domestically inclined so far. I mean, outside the US, we haven't really seen much of him. And this is one policy where it seems like he's got it on track. He is serious about how things are going to pan out, and he is, of course, serious about how India's role is going to be in determining its relations, of course, with Afghanistan as well. And that is something that will be stressed upon as well when Tillerson comes here.
Well, Trump is the president, but in reality, from what we know since January, Trump only makes speeches. Tillerson is solid, Actually, Tillerson, in his previous job, although it was a commercial job, it was a corporate job, he developed extensive contacts, I mean, Tillerson knows more leaders than President Trump does. For instance, in his ExxonMobil job, he got to know Vladimir Putin so well, So Tillerson is really the sheet anchor of US foreign policy. So in a sense, of course, if the president comes, there'll be a lot of atmospherics and all that. But in a sense, Tillerson's visit, I would say, is more important than a presidential visit. The president's daughter is going to Hyderabad shortly. That will attract a lot of media attention. For television, it provides good clips. But the meat of the relationship is in visits like Tillerson, Mattis, and McMaster.
Okay. Tillerson, of course, spoke a bit what is going to be his agenda to some extent. He also reflected a bit on how relations with Pakistan and what is it that he's going to be speaking on. He also spoke about the India-China skirmish that we saw in Doklam, and he said if it had continued, the US would have taken a more proactive approach. How are you viewing the kind of, the feelers that we are getting at least from him and how it's going to be going?
You see, I wouldn't set a lot by store in all these speeches. I mean, obviously the speech was arranged preparatory to the visit to set the tone sort of, I mean, what is the point in saying that US would have been more proactive after the event? No, it's like you showed that little bit about Nikki Haley.
Yes.
I mean, Nikki Haley talks about Security Council membership. The Americans really have no standing, They shouldn't be saying anything about this because they are not a party to anything that initiated the intergovernmental dialogue on Security Council expansion. They haven't signed, they're not among the signatories of among the 140 countries which initiated this process, So the Americans really shouldn't be talking too much and assume that people outside are fools, I mean, it is important. Tillerson's visit is extremely important. But one shouldn't go too much by all these statements and things like that, because that only sets the stage. The substance will be in what he discusses here.
All right. We're, of course, talking about how India is going to receive him, what it's looking at. How should Pakistan be looking at it? Very quickly.
Well, we were the ones who wanted dehyphenation, you know. And we succeeded during George W. Bush and Obama administrations. We succeeded in dehyphenating. I think America's relations with Pakistan stands on its own merit. Its relations with India stands on its own merit.
All right, we leave it there for now, Mr. Nair. Thank you so much for joining us as always on World Panorama to discuss this particular story that we'll be keeping an eye out for in the coming week. Meanwhile, as was pointed out by Mr. Nair here, American ambassador at the United Nations, Nikki Haley, in fact, said that Russia and China don't want any change in the Security Council, and she said that while US is fully behind India on the issue, none of the Security Council members want any dilution of their powers and privileges. Here are more details.
Addressing an event organized by the US-India Friendship Council in Washington, D.C., American Ambassador Nikki Haley said, while the US was on board for a permanent Security Council seat for India, China and Russia are not inclined for any change. She said that if India wants to let the process of Security Council forward, it shouldn't touch the issue of veto. Haley said, and I quote, "This reform of the UN Security Council is much more about the veto. The permanent 5 members of the Security Council have the ability to veto. Russia, China, UK, US and France, and none of them want to give that up. So the key to getting India on the Security Council would have to be not to touch the veto," unquote. This was the first time that any permanent member of the Security Council was raising doubts over another member's intentions. But the fact remains that at the last India-Russia summit in Goa, Russia clearly supported India's bid for a permanent membership at the UN Security Council. Even China hasn't opposed India's candidature openly. For India, G4 members, Germany, Brazil and Japan have always said they want equal status, rights and privileges as old permanent members. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
And moving to news from the United States, where 2 former presidents voiced concern about the current political climate in the country. Barack Obama and George W. Bush offered sharp criticism of the politics of division and fear being witnessed in the US. Their comments are being seen as a veiled rebuke to Donald Trump's leadership.
Former US President Barack Obama was back on the campaign trail for the first time since leaving the White House. Venturing out to support Democrats in 2 governors' races, Obama offered a sharp criticism of the current political climate in the US. Without naming current President Donald Trump, the former president said the country is witnessing the politics of division.
Instead of our politics reflecting our values, we've got politics infecting our communities. Instead of looking for ways to work together and get things done in a practical way, we've got folks who are deliberately trying to make folks angry, to demonize people who have different ideas, to get the base all riled up because it provides a short-term tactical advantage.
Speaking at a campaign event in New Jersey, Obama said Americans should send a message to the world that they are rejecting a politics of division and a politics of fear.
At a time when our politics just seems so divided and so angry and so nasty, is whether we can recapture that spirit, whether we support and embrace somebody who wants to bring people together. Yes, we can. We can do that. Look, I've always believed in that kind of politics.
Coincidentally, another former President George Bush also rebuked Donald Trump on the same day. In a separate, unrelated appearance, Bush warned that the US was being torn apart by ancient hatred.
We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times, it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates into dehumanization. Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
Traditionally, former presidents shy away from commenting publicly on their successors. Perhaps for this very reason, both Obama and Bush did not name the current president in their respective speeches. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Spanish government on Saturday triggered Article 155 to impose central rule in Catalonia. In an address to the nation, the Spanish Prime Minister, Mariano Rajoy, outlined the scope and timing of the measure. The decision to impose the measure for the first time was taken after a crisis cabinet meeting. It allows central authorities to intervene if a regional government does not comply with its constitutional obligations or acts in a way that seriously undermines the interests of Spain. The measure will now require an absolute majority vote from the Spanish Senate that will meet next Friday to address the measure. Rajoy, who leads the minority government, has the support of the centre-left Socialist Party and centre-right Citizens Party, which will be enough votes to enact Article 155. The measure has never been used and is only 2 paragraphs long and does not provide a blueprint for implementation. The announcement was greeted by the independent supporters to rally in the Catalan capital, Barcelona. We're at a quick break here, but still ahead, we'll get you the latest from the ongoing 19th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. Details in a bit.
Art arisen from a multi-hued cultural canvas. Tradition and cultural fervour dating back centuries. And encircling them all, there's a magic that awes. Embrace your nation's brilliant human warmth. Watch Colours of India, Sundays at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha Television.
Welcome back. China's biggest political event, the Communist Party Congress, began on Wednesday in Beijing. At the opening session of CPC's 19th Congress, President Xi Jinping assured its neighbours that China is ready to resolve its disputes through dialogue. Xi also spoke about his plans to make the 2.3 million strong PLA, the world's largest military, into a world-class force. Here's a report.
Referring to the Doklam standoff, President Xi Jinping on Wednesday assured India that China was ready to resolve disputes through dialogue, but not at the expense of Beijing's strategic interests. He also tried to justify China's Belt and Road initiative by saying it is not encroaching upon India's national sovereignty as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Xi was speaking at the opening session of the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. His speech focused mostly on rebuilding the ruling CPC, keeping its socialist structure intact.
中国坚定奉行 独立自主的和平外交政策，尊重各国人民自主选择发展道路的权利，维护国际公平正义，反对把自己的意志强加于人，反对干涉别国内政，反对以强凌弱。中国绝不会以牺牲别国利益为代价来发展自己，也绝不放弃自己的正当权益。 任何人不要幻想让中国吞下损害自身利益的苦果。
Listing China's recent achievements in his 3-hour speech, Jinping said the country has entered a new era where it should take center stage in the world. Xi, who is the General Secretary of the CPC, also vowed to make the People's Liberation Army a world-class military by the mid-21st century. He also pledged to make a sweeping victory in its fight against corruption to escape the historical cycle of rise and fall.
我国社会主要矛盾已经转化为人民日益增长的美好生活需要和不平衡、不充分的发展之间的矛盾。 我国稳定解决了10几亿人的温饱问题，总体上实现小康。不久将全面建成小康社会。
The Congress, which takes place once every 5 years, will end next Tuesday. The closed-door summit determines who rules China and the country's direction for the next term. President Xi, who became China's leader in 2012, is widely expected to remain as the chief of the ruling party. The party is also expected to unveil new members of the country's top decision-making body, the Politburo Standing Committee. Nearly 3,000 delegates are attending the event, which is taking place under tight security. With inputs from Akhilesh Suman, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
China's economic growth slowed down marginally in the latest quarter, although experts say that it matched expectations. The Chinese government data released on Thursday showed the world's second-largest economy growing at 6.8% annual pace in the 3 months ending in September, down from the previous quarter's 6.9%.
A day after Chinese President Xi Jinping's big promises for the country's economic future, China reported growth data that's lower than the second quarter's 6.9% expansion. China's third quarter GDP growth was estimated to be 6.8% compared to the same period last year. The data follows government's efforts to cool the property market and cut debt risks.
初步前3季度国内生产总值按可比价格计算，同比增长6.9%，增速与上半年持平，比上年同期加快0.2个百分点。分产业看，第一产业增长3.7%，第二产业增长6.3%，第三产业增长7.8%。
China's National Statistics Bureau painted a steady but positive economic development in the first 3 quarters. It also highlighted challenges in a complex international environment amid structural changes domestically. On Monday, the People's Bank of China said the world's second-largest economy is likely to post growth of 7% in the second half of the year, thanks to rapid household spending.
3季度国内生产总值同比增长6.8%。 经济连续9个季度运行在6.7%到6.9%的区间，保持中高速增长。
Other countries have always expressed skepticism about the veracity of China's GDP reports. Chinese President Xi Jinping had said on Wednesday that the world's second-largest economy will move from high-speed to high-quality growth as it pushes ahead with reforms. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In other news, Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the latest attacks on a Shiite mosque in Kabul and a Sunni mosque in western Ghor province, which have claimed at least 72 lives. In the attack in Kabul, a suicide bomber walked into the Imam Zaman Mosque, where he detonated his explosives vest. The Afghan president issued a statement condemning both the attacks and said that the country's security forces would step up the fight to eliminate those terrorists who target Afghans of all religions and tribes. Shiite Muslims have suffered a series of attacks in Afghanistan in recent months, many of them claimed by the Sunni Muslim militants of the Islamic State. The latest mosque attacks come at the end of a particularly deadly week for the troubled nation. On Wednesday and Thursday, the Taliban killed at least 58 Afghan security forces in attacks that included an assault that nearly wiped out an army camp in southern Kandahar province. On Tuesday, the Taliban unleashed a wave of attacks across Afghanistan, targeting police compounds and government facilities with suicide bombers, and killed at least 74 people.
پرید ببینیم تو کل نفرات روی مسجد افتیده و روی مسجد آتش گرفته. شیشه 4 طرف میپرید داخل مسجد و از بیرون پریدند و اونجا ما از اونجا رفتیم دیگه پریدیم دیگه. گوش موش تاب مو سریس و حافظه بخیر دیگه. عزیز رفته بود بخیر دیگه نفهمیدیم دیگه.
شوکه شدن مردم به خاطر که شهدا زیاد بوده، زخمی زیاد بود، خورد، کلان، زن، بچه اجزا بوده.
In Pakistan, Mumbai attack mastermind and banned Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief Hafiz Saeed's house arrest has been extended for another 30 days by a judicial review board of Pakistan's Punjab province. However, the board refused to allow the same in the detention of his 4 aides. The 30-day detention will be applicable from the 24th of October. Saeed's aides will walk out free on the expiry of the September 25th detention order if they are not detained in any other case. The news agency PTI reported that the Home Department of Punjab government had sought 3 months extension to the detention of Saeed and others under the public safety law. The government may arrest Saeed's 4 aides in any case on expiry of their detention period in the last week of this month. And now let's shift gears and bring you up to speed with all the sports news that you might have missed. In tennis, Switzerland's Roger Federer defeated world number 1 Rafael Nadal 6-4, 6-3 to win the Shanghai Masters to register his 4th victory of the year over his Spanish rival. His victory ensured to close the gap at the top of the standings to less than 2,000 points and keep his chances alive to finish as the world number 1. Federer took an hour and 12 minutes to claim his 6th title of the year. In cycling, Italy's Diego Ulissi won the Tour of Turkey after Sam Bennett crashed out in Istanbul on Sunday. Ireland's Bennett, who had already won 4 stages, was on the 2nd place behind his teammate Matteo Pellucci, who slid out on the bend. In the sprint for the finish, Italian Pellucci was overtaken by Theuns, who held on to the stage win. Ulissi, who took the overall lead after winning stage 4, finished the final stage in 6th to secure victory. Cristiano Ronaldo scored a penalty, but Real Madrid were held 1-1 at home by Tottenham Hotspur in the Champions League. Rafael Varane's own goal helped Hotspur take the lead in the 28th minute, but Ronaldo converted a spot kick shortly before half-time after a foul by Sergio Aurier. Hugo Lloris saved a sure second for Real early in the second half by somehow getting a foot on a Benzema header from close range to keep the score at 1-1. Real and Hotspur are at the top of the section with 7 points. Lionel Messi joined the exclusive 100-goal club in European competitions as Barcelona defeated Olympiacos 3-1. Dimitrios Nikolaou scored the opener in the 18th minute to give Barca the lead against Olympiacos. Messi then scored the second goal from a free kick in the 61st minute to extend Barca's lead. Nikolaou scored his second goal of the match in the 89th minute by converting a corner kick into a goal. Ducati rider Andrea Dovizioso breathed new life into the MotoGP Championship by beating Marc Marquez in a ferocious duel to win a rain-soaked Japanese Grand Prix in Motegi. Dovizioso grabbed the lead from championship leader Marquez in the last lap. Italy's Dovizioso won the race by 0.249 seconds and trimmed the lead to 11 points with 3 races left in the season. Danilo Petrucci finished 3rd. This was the 4th podium for the season, while Maverick Vinales' title hopes extinguished with a disappointing 9th position. Finally, thousands of people turned out to watch a fireworks display marking Diwali Day in the English city of Leicester. Remember, Leicester holds one of the largest Diwali festivals in the world outside India due to its British Indian community. We're leaving you now with these visuals.